Okay, let's unpack this. Um, Imagine for a second that you are buying this beautiful multi-million-dollar oceanfront mansion.
Sounds pretty good so far.
Right. You move your family in, you decorate every room, and then you basically just sit there and watch it literally wash away into the sea.
Oh, wow. Just gone.
Completely gone. And not because of some, freak tsunami or unpredictable weather event,
Yeah.
but because you willingly chose to build it on 200 miles of shifting sand.
Well, it sounds, completely irrational when you frame it like that. You'd think no one in their right mind would make that kind of investment, knowing the foundational reality.
Yeah, exactly.
But that, it happens constantly, both in literal real estate and, as we'll see, in human psychology.
And that bizarre human tendency to just completely ignore reality in favor of a beautiful illusion is exactly what we are getting into today on this deep dive.
That's a really fascinating topic.
It really is. We've got our hands on a transcript from May 31st, 2026. It's a talk by Rick DePaolis, and it's simply titled Deception.
Right, and what's fascinating here isn't just the religious doctrine, it's how DePaolis uses these vivid, real-world metaphors from coastal real estate to the U.S. Treasury to map out the actual architecture of a lie.
Yeah, like, how are we fooled by the world? How do we spot a counterfeit? And honestly, the most terrifying part, how do we stop fooling ourselves?
Well, the material sets up this entire exploration with that exact real estate scenario you just mentioned.
The oceanfront property.
Exactly. He pitches the audience this hypothetical piece of prime, gorgeous coastal land. You buy the bill of goods, you build your dream house, you have this incredible view.
Sounds flawless.
Right, until the location is actually revealed. The Outer Banks in North Carolina.
Yeah, and for anyone listening who might be unfamiliar with the geography of the East Coast, the Outer Banks isn't a normal coastline. It's a barrier island.
Pure sand.
Pure sand. I mean, it's about 200 miles long, but it's incredibly narrow. At its absolute widest, it's maybe 3 miles across.
Right.
But at its narrowest point, we are talking a mere 150 yards.
That's nothing.
I know. If you have a decent throwing arm, you could literally chuck a baseball across the entire island. And the kicker is, there is absolutely no bedrock beneath it. None. It is 100% sand.
Which is what makes the development of that land such a fascinating study in, human behavior. People are well aware of the geology. They know it's a sandbar.
Right.
Yet they are out there building luxury homes that rent for like $15,000 a week. And the reality of building heavy structures on sand is just brutal.
It really is. The source actually mentions that since 2006, nearly 40 of these luxury homes have simply collapsed and washed away into the Atlantic.
Almost 40.
Yeah, it's wild. The transcript brings up the Cape Hatteras Lighthouse as this, ultimate monument to fighting a losing battle.
Oh, the lighthouse they had to move, right?
Yeah. To keep this historic structure from falling into the ocean, engineers had to physically pick it up and move it 2,700 yards inland.
That is a massive undertaking.
And then years later, the ocean caught up again, and they had to move it another 2,700 yards.
You're kidding?
Nope. And there was even this spot called Shelley Island, this gorgeous little sandbar made entirely of seashells that just formed out of nowhere one day.
Like a spontaneous island.
Exactly. People started planning vacations to go see it. And before they could even book their flights, the ocean just swallowed it back up. It vanished completely.
Wow. And, DePaolis connects this geological reality back to an ancient text, specifically the Gospel of Matthew chapter 7.
The wise man and the foolish man.
Exactly. The famous parable of the foolish man who builds his house on sand versus the wise man who builds on rock. But the psychological mechanism he highlights here is way more profound than just a simple morality tale.
How so?
Well, he emphasizes the absolute inevitability of the storm. The narrative doesn't suggest that building on a solid foundation guarantees sunny weather forever.
Right, like you're immune to bad things.
Right. The storms of life, the economic downturns, the personal tragedies, they hit everyone universally. It's just a matter of when, it's never a matter of if.
I look at this almost like investing in a tech startup that has a flashy pitch deck, charismatic founders, beautiful branding, but absolutely zero actual product.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Yeah, it looks amazing on paper. Everyone's throwing money at it because the immediate view is so appealing. But the second the market experiences a downturn in the storm, the entire company evaporates.
Because there was no foundational reality holding it together.
Exactly. But wait, I'm stuck on something here.
Okay, what's that?
If an investor sinks money into a startup with no product, or a homeowner builds a mansion on a sandbar,
Uh-huh.
and they can clearly see the sand. Is that actually deception? I mean, isn't that just willful ignorance?
That is exactly DePaolis' point. The line between deception and willful ignorance is incredibly porous.
We just ignore the sand.
Precisely. We willingly buy that bill of goods because the immediate payoff, the oceanfront view, completely blinds us to the foundational reality. We want the view so badly, we convince ourselves the storm won't happen to us. And his warning is that avoiding the foundational reality doesn't change the foundational reality. If you don't build on solid ground, you will, quote, suffer the destruction for it.
Okay, so if we know storms are inevitable, and we know our brains are hardwired to prioritize a beautiful view over a solid foundation, how do we train ourselves to avoid buying the house on the sand in the first place?
Well, the methodology he presents comes from this brilliant real-world analogy regarding the United States Treasury.
Oh, I love this part.
Yeah, think about how government agents are trained to identify counterfeit currency.
You'd assume they'd be studying the fakes, right? Like looking at watermarks, the wrong ink colors, slight misspelling.
Exactly, that's the intuitive approach. But he explains that they actually do the exact opposite. They don't study fakes at all.
They only study the real ones.
Yes. They exclusively handle authentic bills. They spend hundreds of hours just touching, feeling, and examining the real currency. So when a fake bill eventually arrives, they know it instantly.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. I completely relate to this from a musical perspective.
Oh, how so?
Think about a musician who practices a song so perfectly for hundreds of hours. If someone else sits at the piano and plays that exact same piece, but misses a single obscure flat note, the trained musician will physically flinch.
It's jarring.
Yeah, it sounds like a siren going off in their head. The wrong note is immediately obvious because their baseline for the song is absolute.
That is a perfect parallel, and neurologically that's what's happening. You create an impenetrable cognitive baseline.
But in practical terms, how does DePaolis suggest we handle the real bill in our daily lives? What is the real bill?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, he is advocating for total immersion in truth, specifically the Word of God.
Okay.
He points to Matthew 24, noting that Jesus warned be not deceived multiple times regarding the end times.
Right.
And he also mentions 2 Thessalonians, where God actually turns people over to a, quote, strong delusion because they didn't receive a love for the truth.
Wow, a strong delusion. That's heavy.
It is. Without this deeply ingrained baseline, he argues, we become incredibly vulnerable. Like children, as Ephesians says, tossed to and fro by every wind of doctrine.
Because if you don't know what a real bill feels like, you'll accept monopoly money.
Exactly. You become easily manipulated by seducing spirits. And the deceiver's strategy is so subtle.
It's the wolf in sheep's clothing, right?
Yes. The enemy comes as a sheep, targeting the elect of God, just as he started with Eve in Genesis. It's not a frontal assault. It's that voice that tells you, it's okay if you do this, or you don't really have to do that.
It provides permission to take the easy way out.
Precisely.
Which brings us to a pivot in the talk that I think is the absolute core of this deep dive. Spotting external lies is one thing, but DePaolis shifts the conversation to a much more insidious threat.
The lies coming from inside the house.
Yes, the ultimate con self-deception. He argues that the scariest thing isn't the world lying to us. It's us lying to ourselves.
And those internal lies are so universally human. I'm broken. I'm unforgivable. I'm not enough.
That not enough one is huge. He shares this really poignant anecdote about a woman he calls her Sister Lynn's employer.
Oh, the sticky notes.
Yes. This woman literally had physical signs that said, I am enough, taped up in every single room of her house.
Just to remind herself constantly.
Exactly, because somewhere along the line, she had been told that she wasn't enough for God. DePaolis firmly states this is a complete lie. He says God created you for a purpose, so you inherently are enough.
And he grounds this in textual anchors. He points to John 15, where God calls humanity friends, and 1 John 3, emphasizing that God loves us and calls us his children.
Regardless of how broken we feel.
Right. And to drive it home, he brings up the Apostle Paul.
Yeah, the guy who wrote a massive portion of the New Testament.
Exactly. Arguably one of the most influential figures ever. Yet even Paul called himself the chiefest of sinners.
Basically calling himself the worst person alive.
Yeah. And he worried that he might become a castaway, disqualified, and abandoned. DePaolis argues that if God can fix Paul with all that intense baggage, he can fix anyone.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? Because there is a striking contradiction here.
What do you mean?
Well, Religious rhetoric is so often stereotyped as being this massive guilt trip, like you're a miserable sinner, you're worthless. But DePaolis' central thesis here is a profound rejection of shame.
That's a really good point.
It's radical. He's
Yeah.
reframing feelings of low self-worth like I'm unforgivable, not as humility, but as a literal form of spiritual deception. You're buying into a con.
Yes, believing you are beyond repair is actually buying into the devil's lie. It neutralizes you.
Exactly.
But DePaolis also recognizes that life is a journey, right? Things don't always get fixed exactly when or how we want them to, but believing you are enough is the necessary solid rock you need to weather that journey.
Okay, but here's the terrifying paradox. Since our own minds can deceive us so thoroughly, we can't rely solely on ourselves to spot the lies, right? We need an external anchor.
We absolutely do. You cannot do this in isolation. And that's where the concept of community comes in as the antidote.
Right, he quotes Hebrews 3:13, "Exhort one another daily, lest any of you be hardened through the deceitfulness of sin."
That word hardened is key. The whole purpose of church and godly friends is to keep you soft.
Soft, meaning open to change.
Exactly. To keep you convicted, which means recognizing the need to grow and change rather than condemned, which implies you're just doomed.
Got it.
But, and this is a big but, he immediately follows this with a danger warning about false leaders.
Right, Romans 16.
Yes, Romans warns to mark those who cause division and use, quote, fair speeches and great swelling words to deceive the simple. They serve their own bellies, not the truth.
Whereas Paul was the opposite.
Exactly. Paul admitted his speech might be rude or ignorant, but he was delivering the genuine truth, not trying to win people over with flashy rhetoric.
Okay, wait, I have to push back here with a critical question.
Let's hear it.
DePaolis explicitly warns the listener to be aware of people who use fair speeches to deceive them. But couldn't a skeptic argue that DePaolis is giving a fair speech right now? I mean, he's very articulate, using great metaphors. How does a listener actually tell the difference?
This raises a really important question, and the answer comes down to DePaolis' own metric for authenticity. The motivation.
Motivation.
Right? False leaders serve their own belly. They cause division. They extract value for their own ego or power. True community and true ministers might occasionally be rude or deliver really hard truths, but their goal is to keep you accountable, soft-hearted, and grounded in foundational truth. They aren't just feeding their own ego.
They're trying to pour concrete, not sell you a timeshare on the sand.
Exactly.
Man, what a journey this has been today. We've traveled from multi-million-dollar homes washing into the Atlantic Ocean to the U.S. Treasury's method of handling real bills.
To the realization that telling ourselves we aren't enough is actually the ultimate con.
Yeah. So as we wrap up, I think the big takeaway for you, listening right now, is to evaluate your own real estate.
Absolutely. Are the core beliefs that you've built your life upon solid rock, or are they just shifting sand?
And I want to leave you with one final provocative puzzle to mull over. We talked all about how the Treasury spots a fake by knowing the real bill perfectly.
Right.
But what happens if the real bill you've been studying your whole life, the baseline truth handed to you by culture or your own assumptions, turns out to be a masterclass counterfeit itself?
Oh, wow.
If self-deception is truly as powerful as DePaolis claims, how deep do we actually have to dig to ensure that the rock we are standing on isn't just densely packed sand?